Speaking of loss of trust in the government, Kevin McCarthy has been ousted from the Speaker of the House. I do want to show a few counter narratives, but I want to look at Matt Gaetz' speech because although I'm not sure if I like Matt Gaetz. I think he's one of the better ones. I think he's got good policy, but sometimes I'm not sure if he's trying to put on a spectacle or he's really trying to do something important and meaningful. But I'm not going to lie. I feel like this speech is very, very compelling and it's worth a share. Let's watch Matt Gaetz explain why it's not dangerous to kick Kevin McCarthy out of the House because what government is doing is dangerous. And I pretty much completely agree with what he's saying here.
Mr. Speaker, my friend from Oklahoma says that my colleagues and I who don't support Kevin McCarthy would plunge the House and the country into chaos. Chaos is Speaker McCarthy. Chaos is somebody who we cannot trust with their word. The one thing that the White House, House Democrats, and many of us on the conservative side of the Republican caucus would argue is that the thing we have in common, Kevin McCarthy said something to all of us at one point or another that he didn't really mean and never intended to live up to. I don't think voting against Kevin McCarthy is chaos. I think $33 trillion in debt is chaos. I think that facing a $2.2 trillion annual deficit is chaos. I think that not passing single subject spending bills is chaos. I think the fact that we have been governed in this country since the mid-90s by continuing resolution and omnibus is chaos. And the way to liberate ourselves from that is a series of reforms to this body that I would hope would outlast Speaker McCarthy's time here, would outlast my time here, and would outlast either of our majorities. Reforms that I have heard some of the most conservative members of this body fight for, and some of the reforms that we've been battling for that I've even heard those in the Democrat caucus say would be worthy and helpful to the House, like open amendments, like understanding what the budget is. We have been out of compliance with budget laws for most of my life, most of many of your lives. And by the way, if we did those things, if we had single subject bills, if we had an understanding on the top line, if we had open amendments, if we had trust and honesty and understanding, there would be times when my conservative colleagues and I would lose, might be a few times when we'd win. There'd be times that we would form partnerships that might otherwise not be really predictable in the American body politic, but the American people would see us legislating. These last few days, we've suspended the momentum that we had established the week earlier, where we were bringing bills to the floor, voting on them, staying late at night, working hard. That's what the American people expect. It's something Speaker McCarthy hasn't delivered, and that's why I've moved to vacate the chair.
One of the most compelling things that he said was, how much debt and deficit and spending they're doing is legitimately insane. And I don't know that this is the right move. I'm going to provide the counter argument from people like Thomas Massie, who doesn't think it's the right move. And I trust Thomas Massie even more than I trust Matt Gaetz. But at the same time, it is unsustainable what the government's doing. Democrat, Republican, McCarthy, Trump, Biden, Pelosi, it doesn't matter. They spend money anyway. Like, this is the part that people don't get because they look at a savior or they think somebody's the enemy. And it's like, think what you want, but both parties have been doing this for decades, and it's absolutely insane. And they have no plan on stopping. They only have a plan to trick you into thinking they're stopping while they keep doing it, by providing you guys with characters that you're obsessed with or that you hate to make like a WWE Marvel movie while status quo continues as normal. So he's not really wrong about that. And he's certainly not wrong about the omnibus bills. The single spending bill is what he wants, is what he said. I agree. I mean, an omnibus bill is probably one of the top 5 biggest scams in recent history, besides maybe income tax, a lot of the foreign wars, the lockdowns, and the big pharma, Operation Warp Speed stuff. I would say it's up there because usually when you're passing something, it's like, what does it mean? What is it? Let's look at it. But with an omnibus bill, they jam in like 1,000 things. It's so many pages that nobody reads it. It's trillions of dollars. And by the time you get to it, they say you like hate women or something. They're like, you want to kill veterans. And you're like, what the hell? It's like, if you don't sign the bill immediately, they just make up some narrative that you're trying to like hurt the environment or like, destroy poor people's lives. Or it's like, there's always like, it's not just a bill that says one thing. It might say one thing at the top, but there's 1,000 different people being funded in a multi-trillion-dollar bill. I agree with Gaetz that it should be a single topic bill, one topic, one bill, and then pass them all individually and you could vote on them. The omnibus bills are a travesty. So I don't know really what I think of this. To be honest, I didn't care if Kevin McCarthy stayed in. I don't care if he leaves. It might be worse when he leaves and people might be digging themselves in a deeper hole. It might not. But I'm gonna read Thomas Massie's, and I'm gonna tell you guys, I have to be honest. I'm getting to the point now where I do vote. I do want to get things done in government, but I almost think Republicans are so far gone. I'm starting to think that if they get destroyed quicker, it might actually be better than if they just keep kicking the can down the road. And I've never thought this way, and I'm not like super sold on it, but now I understand people who are like, who cares? Let's just let it get destroyed and hopefully we can rebuild, because I just don't see the path that everybody else sees. But let me read Thomas Massie's real quick.
Mr. Speaker, as the only still serving co-author and co-sponsor of the motion to vacate Speaker Boehner, I can tell you this motion to vacate is a terrible idea. As the only member who's serving here who took every chance to vote against Speaker Boehner and to vote against Speaker Ryan, I can tell you that this chamber has been run better, more conservatively, and more transparently under Mr. McCarthy than any other speaker that I have served under. As a member of the Rules Committee, one of three conservatives who were placed there out of trust, the Speaker gave us a blocking position by putting 3 of us on there to keep an eye on the Rules Committee, to make sure the process was fair and even. I can tell you it's been fair and even. None of us are voting against the Speaker today. Regular order is at odds with predetermined outcomes. Yet the Speaker is being accused of not holding to regular order and predetermined outcomes at the same time. It is not possible. You cannot be for both at the same time. I was a party to the January agreement, and I can tell you that there were promises in there, but there was never a promise for an outcome. There was never a promise that you could force Joe Biden to sign something. There was only the promise that we would try, and try we have. We have tried in the Rules Committee. We have tried on the floor. We've been trying this since the summer, and there's enough blame to go around for why we don't have 12 bills, but part of it was a relitigation of the debt limit deal. By the way, there was no promise on the debt limit deal, no conditions on that in January, 0 whatsoever. I was in the room for that. So the 12 bills were delayed over what? $100 billion. That's a lot of money. But it's nothing compared to the $2 trillion that I came here to object to when Speaker Pelosi and President Trump pushed that bill through. We've had over 500 amendments. Listen, this is a referendum on this institution. We have tried regular order. Speaker McCarthy has tried regular order. If regular order fails today, if you vacate the Speaker, nobody is going to try it again.
Gentleman's time has expired.
This institution will fail. Please do not vacate the Speaker.
It's my favorite member of Congress. Thomas Massie said, from my perspective, the House has been functioning better, more transparently, and more conservatively with Speaker McCarthy than it did with Speaker Boehner. Is that really his name? And Speaker Ryan. We have issues, but replacing Speaker McCarthy won't magically fix them. In fact, it could get worse. Some are asking how it could get worse. Here's one bad scenario. In the new Speaker election, a candidate wins not by getting 218 Republican votes, but instead by getting some Democrat votes in exchange for letting their bad bills come out to the floor or otherwise sharing power. Someone said, would Donaldson not be a big upgrade? McCarthy just seems like we're continuing to settle for less. Thomas Massie said he'd be great, but he doesn't pass the purity test that Gaetz has set for speakers. Donalds co-wrote the CR with border security at 8% cut, with 21 conservatives voted against it on Friday. I voted for it. So, I guess he meant to say Byron Donalds, but he said Donaldson. I think that's what happened. Apparently, Byron Donalds voted to keep McCarthy there. And that's one thing that you kind of see there's inconsistency on. There's a lot of like MAGA Republicans that voted with McCarthy that felt it was a good idea to keep it. There's many people voting against it. I'm going to show this real quick because Trump, I think, backs McCarthy, and he said this recently. He said, why is it that Republicans are always fighting amongst themselves? Why aren't they fighting the radical left Democrats who are destroying the country? He likes McCarthy. He backs McCarthy. I think he wants people to lay off him, even though it's too late. But his base doesn't like McCarthy and doesn't want him there. And Matt Gaetz got enough votes. I think they got at least 6 to get him out of there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm going to be honest. I don't have a huge opinionated stance on this. Like maybe some would wish I do, because I don't really believe most of these people. Chip Roy's speech was great. I didn't want to get copyright stricken, but it's on my Twitter if anybody wants to look. I think he went off and said some interesting stuff. Matt Gaetz had a very compelling speech. I agree with a lot of it. Thomas Massie's always compelling, and I think he might be right. Like maybe this is worse for Republicans, right? Maybe it's worse, and you get somebody in there worse, or Democrats get somebody in there somehow by finessing a deal, and now we get even less stuff. Possible. Maybe it gets better. Possible. I don't know. I don't know what happens, and I personally don't think that Republicans are being strategic, but I understand why. On one hand, you don't want to destroy something if you don't have something better to build, because this country could get way, way worse, you know? But at the same time, it's like, how long are we going to keep doing the same status quo and acting like it's normal just because everybody in Congress is happy? Like, it's not normal. It might get worse. It absolutely might get worse. And I don't want it to get worse. I truly don't. But I'm starting to think this way. Maybe it needs to get worse, because like just putting on smiley faces and putting characters like Obama and Trump that people like and they think it's going to change and it never does. Like, I don't think it's sustainable. So, you know, in some ways, I agree with Thomas Massie, and I think he's the most honorable person in Congress. In other ways, you know, I wonder if Matt Gaetz is just doing stuff because he truly believes it, or it's kind of just a power play. I guess I really just don't care that much to, whether he stays or not. I don't think that much is going to change. And I think more work needs to be done for that. Let me know your comments. I'll read a few at the end. Hey, what's up, my friends? Like my page, subscribe to my channel, and check out Dream Rare Podcast to hear this full conversation and podcast. Yes, sir.